The quirky doctor has the ability to talk to animals, which allows him to easily cure all sorts of ailments. This includes the king of beasts, the great tiger, and even the ancient beast, the fire-breathing dragon. He can even cure the playful and adorable little squirrel with ease. His nurse is a psyduck, and his assistant is a gorilla. After a surgery, it only takes 3 minutes for the squirrel to come back to life. In this ancient and mysterious manner, John has still achieved eco-friendly automation in his life. He effortlessly manages to dress without using his hands and avoids using his hands whenever possible. Even playing chess requires automatic movement of the black and white pieces. While John was happily interacting with the animals, a parrot suddenly arrived to report an emergency, making John feel that something was seriously wrong. He instructed the peacock to block the glass doors and windows while he, afraid, hid under the table and played dead. A girl who claimed to be a British princess arrived to visit. She represented the Queen of Buckingham Palace and invited John to treat a strange illness. John refused immediately, as since his wife's death 10 years ago, John had been living in a state of depression and avoided communication with anyone. He would even lie on the ground and play dead like a mole when seeing humans. However, the princess gave him a compelling reason to go. If the queen were to fall ill and die, John's Eden Garden, where he had lived for decades, would be seized and demolished by the government without any compensation. Thousands of animals living in Eden Garden would be left homeless. Although John claimed not to care, the animals were devastated by the news. John stated that as long as he or the land deed was valid, but the parrot corrected him only while the queen was alive would the deed remain effective. Under the parrot's persistent persuasion, to avoid having a group of animals sleeping on the streets, John decided to temporarily overcome his psychological barrier and go treat the queen. But before leaving, there was one very important thing they needed to do: tidy up their personal appearance. The gorilla helped him put on anesthesia so he would only need a short nap, and when he woke up, he would look like a handsome gentleman. John's mode of transportation was a long-legged ostrich wearing stockings. They raced their way to Buckingham Palace. John performed a stylish, smooth stop and parked the ostrich at the palace entrance. Unaware that the queen was now on the brink of death, the palace's royal physician was using an ancient folk remedy to treat the queen. John immediately recognized him as the crooked classmate from years ago. He first had the dog go over and sniff the queen. When the dog confirmed that the queen's illness was unusual, John grabbed his equipment and went over to a nearby fish tank. He put on a professional diving mask and plunged into the tank. Inside the tank was a millennium-old octopus. John asked the octopus for information, and the octopus told him that the queen had collapsed after drinking a cup of tea. Upon learning this, John realized the situation was serious. He had Saida clear out everyone present. Then he took out a book and had the dog search for corresponding plants based on the smell it had detected earlier. After continuous confirmation by the dog, John discovered that the queen's illness was caused by a very rare Sumatra plant. This toxic plant was called the nightshade flower. If the antidote was not administered by the full moon 1 week from now, the queen would be in grave danger. The only antidote for the queen was located on the far-off Grand Line, at the very end of which lay an island named Raft Drew. On this island stood a legendary devil fruit tree. Consuming a fruit from this tree would neutralize the queen's poison. To cure the queen's poison as quickly as possible, John decided to set off immediately. Before leaving, he made sure the princess would only eat the food he personally prepared and feed it to the queen. To be cautious, John left the dog to guard the queen's safety and secretly placed a stick insect behind a hidden picture frame to monitor any suspicious activity. John and the animals from Eden Garden set sail on his sea vessel to find the legendary final island, Raft Drew. Just as John left, the palace minister was in a panic. He was actually the mastermind behind poisoning the queen. His goal was to seize the throne after the queen's death. To prevent John from obtaining the devil fruit, he ordered his subordinates to spare no expense in eliminating John and insisted that the matter be kept strictly confidential. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation was overheard by the stick insect on the picture frame. Thus, Stubbins quickly pursued John aboard the royal ship No. 1. Seeing this, John realized the severity of the situation and immediately ordered all animals to prepare for battle. He then picked up a telescope. He instructed the monkeys to prepare the secret weapon, revealing that they were calling a whale for help using sound waves. The Merrill ship quickly turned around, greeted by a massive humpback whale. As the whale took position, John put on his long-shelved battle armor. With the help of a chimpanzee, John jumped into the sea. Stubbins thought John was abandoning ship. To Stubbins' surprise, things got even more astonishing. A duck launched the whale armor towards the ship. The polar bear then dove into the sea. With the polar bear's help, a massive whale battleship was quickly assembled. Under John's command, The whale pulled the merrill ship forward at breakneck speed. Stubbins, who had just ordered the cannons fired, could only watch helplessly as the merrill ship sailed away. According to the navigation chart, their next destination was a bandit stronghold to find a crucial item. However, the bandits were known for their brutality, and it was said that no one who set foot on their island could leave alive. John's mission was to steal the Bandit King's most treasured navigational diary. Disguised, they sneaked into the bandit's palace. John used a dragonfly guide and offered 4 sugar cubes as payment, using an army of ants to unlock the Bandit King's door. Due to the narrow and obstructed passage, John decided to let his small apprentice navigate through while he kept watch at the entrance. John repeatedly warned him not to remove his disguise, but as soon as the apprentice entered the passage, he tore off his facial cover. Upon reaching the bandits' hall, he was astonished to find that the bandits had raised over 20 lions as guards. The recently removed disguise was actually the mane of a lion. With no other choice, the apprentice had to walk along the walls to the ceiling bridge. Facing the pride of lionesses, he skillfully crossed them. At the end of the corridor, he discovered the secret room John had mentioned. Entering the room, he was greeted by a treasure trove of gold and jewels but was not interested in the wealth. Determined, the apprentice found the legendary navigational diary at the end of the vault. To his surprise, the book had John's name written in it. While he was puzzled, the dragonfly guide made a huge mistake by lifting the lioness's whiskers. The Bandit King discovered the apprentice. John heard the roar of the lions and rushed to help his apprentice but was pulled out by a group of soldiers. John was the Bandit King's greatest enemy without exception. 20 years ago, John was his son-in-law. The Bandit King's daughter, an adventurer, defied her father's wishes and sailed with John. Together they traveled the world, saving countless animals, including the timid gorilla who accompanied John and the cold-sensitive polar bear. Witnessed by animals, they fell in love, until he decided to search for the end of the world. Laugh drew when their ship met with an accident and sank to the bottom of the sea. Unable to accept the reality, John was devastated and shut himself in Eden Garden. As a father, the Bandit King blamed John for everything. The most important treasure, the navigational diary, was the only relic left by his daughter, so he decided to make John pay. He chained John up and released a tiger that had been starving for 3 years. Unexpectedly, the tiger had a migraine and lay in John's arms, hoping to be cured. Before treatment, the tiger wanted to have a full meal first. As a doctor, John was well aware of animal habits and knew that even the largest tiger was still a feline. He used sunlight refraction to play hide and seek. Meanwhile, the dragonfly guide informed the animals on the ship about John's capture. All the animals mobilized for a rescue, crossing the market to reach the palace. The polar bear picked up a bomb and blew up the Bandit King's armory. The gorilla discovered John, who was trapped in the prison. Seeing that John and the parrot were about to be eaten by the tigress, the gorilla immediately broke through the iron bars and knocked the tiger away. Although the timid gorilla had never fought before, he was willing to risk it all for John today, even though he believed he was no match for the tiger. With John's constant guidance, the gorilla seemed to find some confidence. Meanwhile, the little apprentice took advantage of the chaos and sneaked back into the Pirate King's treasure vault, stealing the precious nautical diary. Just as he was happily thinking he had completed his mission, dozens of rifles were suddenly pointed at his head. Stubbins effortlessly acquired the precious nautical diary. Moreover, before leaving, he also fired on John's ship, the Mary. Watching the Mary slowly sink into the sea, John lost hope. Not only could he not save the Queen, but he had also lost his wife's only heirloom. He felt he had failed. John had hoped to fulfill his wife's dying wish with this journey, but now it was too late. The Bandit King, who had overheard John's inner monologue, was willing to help John despite his deep hatred for him due to his daughter's death. The Bandit King gave John a ship named the Sunshine Voyager. Though the ship was so dilapidated that it had no usable parts, at least it could still float on the sea. Even though there was no nautical diary and not even a decent ship, John was not afraid because he had an unbeatable trump card, summoning whales. With the help of hundreds of whales, John quickly found the legendary island of Raft-Drew, the end of the world. Also arriving with them was John's arch-nemesis, Stubbins. To avoid Stubbins' army, John had to lead the animals around the cliff on the other side of the mountain to find the mysterious cave. Unexpectedly, Stubbins had arrived here ahead of John. It turned out that he had searched the entire island but couldn't find the legendary Tree of Life. Stubbins asked where the tree was, but John gave a vague answer and refused to respond. Enraged, Stubbins jabbed at the ground with his flag, causing the ground to erupt in flames and spread out, covering the entire cave as if it were engulfed in lava. Suddenly, a gust of wind stirred, awakening a dragon above the cave. It began to breathe scorching flames at the people. The once arrogant British Royal Navy was now terrified and in disarray. Stubbins even fell off the cliff and was left uncertain of his fate. Those who could escape hid, while those who couldn't were roasted by the dragon. John, seeing no other option, prepared to retreat. However, the next second, the dragon's tail came down on the polar bear's waist. In a desperate move, John drew his sword and struck, but the dragon's tail was as hard as diamond. Though he saved the polar bear, John was swept up into the air by the dragon. Worse, Stubbins' army had been annihilated, and the dragon set its sights solely on John. As everyone was about to be burned to a crisp, John suddenly began to show his skills. He attempted to communicate with the dragon. From the dragon, John learned that originally there had been 2 dragons guarding the sacred tree. They had guarded Raftru for 800 years, but due to human greed, the dragon's mate had died. She was often in pain due to her condition. Seeing that John and his group meant no harm, she put John down and urged them to leave quickly. As a doctor, John couldn't bear to see the dragon continue to suffer, so he decided to stay and help treat her illness. Upon further examination, John discovered that the dragon suffered from digestive problems due to intestinal blockage, which could only be resolved through surgery. With everyone's help, they moved the dragon to the operating table. After ensuring everything was in place, John began the treatment using a scallion for lubrication. After the scallion, John pulled out hundreds of pieces of armor from the dragon's stomach, as if it contained an entire Spanish army. With a gust of pungent wind erupting from the dragon, its body seemed to lighten considerably. Next, John needed to remove a larger blockage. With the gorilla's help, they exerted all their strength to extract it. It turned out to be the main culprit causing the dragon's discomfort. To show her gratitude, the dragon decided to gift John an extraordinary treasure hidden deep in the cave, the fruit of the devil. John once again honored his beloved wife. With the help of the animals, they successfully obtained the devil's fruit. Just as the queen's life was drawing to a close, John and the animals arrived in time. At that moment, the minister about to become king was displeased. He ordered his soldiers to capture John immediately. The animals united and started to fight back, with a drop of devil's fruit juice entering the queen's mouth. Her eyes slowly opened. Faced with irrefutable evidence, the minister was arrested and imprisoned. Watching the queen's health improve, John returned to his Eden garden with a sense of peace. After this event, John completely opened the window to his heart. He reopened the doors of Eden Garden and continued to treat various diseases for the animals free of charge. If you had the ability to talk to animals, would you patiently make friends with them?